All right, guys. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Travel Meet 2020 and welcome once again. Thank you for joining in, whoever is online. Now, before we move to the session, today we have a topic where we are talking about co-living spaces and co-working spaces in terms of its slow travel, where we have a lot of slow travel that is building up in the country, and at the same time, there's a lot of phenomenal concept of co-living and co-working, working out for digital nomads as we are increasing by the year. Today we have four speakers with us, which I'd like to introduce to you all. First and foremost, welcome Nikhil. Nikhil Mangal is the general manager experience at Cowrks. And moreover that he has about 12 to 14 years experience in the hospitality industry. Nikhil, first and foremost, I would like to ask you is how did you shifted from the hospitality experience to that of co-working spaces with, standing here with co-work?
Right. First of all, thank you, Shaurya, for the introduction. So, as you mentioned, I'd spent about 12 odd years with hotels and had spent enough time to understand how hotels work. So, wanted to do something new. Now, co-working as an industry is an industry that's booming. There's huge growth lined up despite what's happening currently with the pandemic. Still, flexible workspaces as an industry is poised for immense growth, I feel. But also the key reason for moving from hotels to co-working was it was a nice transition from a complete hospitality to a blend of real estate and hospitality, because co-working, the key aspect of co-working in addition to providing spaces is providing all elements of service that come along with the space. So I felt it was a natural transition and a great industry to be a part of.
That's really nice, Nikhil. Next
Thank
up, I'm introducing Mayur. Mayur is the founder of NomadGao, which is also a co-living space for digital nomads. And currently, he's working for a non-profit venture called Program Panchayat. That is a bridge between urban and rural development in terms of technology and progression, where we have lot of rural developments in terms of businesses also, where we talk about a lot of localites are getting help from Mayur, and Mayur is trying to connect the gap in between these developments. So Mayur, can you tell us a little bit about this further?
Yeah, so since 2014, I've been working remotely. For 4 years, I spent traveling within India and Southeast Asia. So while doing that, I felt that India has a great potential to attract digital nomads, global digital nomads. So I started NomadGao last year, and I'm a big believer in power of remote work as a great equalizer. So I run a rural co-working, co-living place, and uh, most part of last 5-6 years I've spent in villages. So I stayed in Himachal, a village in Himachal for a while. So, and being from a small town, I always felt that remote work can really change the game. We have over 60% of our population living in villages, and you know everybody has the same internet, just that the exposure to how to use the internet and how to use social media is different in villages and urban areas. So we are launching a fellowship program through Program Panchayat, wherein people who have remote jobs or remote work, they can go to a village, stay in a village for 3 months, educate the rural population while doing their work and doing their job. So they don't have to uh, quit that because they are working remotely. So the
That's
idea
quite
is,
nice.
yeah.
In fact, I think at this particular point, I think there's a lot of requirement in terms of what we're building up to in terms of our, not just crowd that is moving in, but with a lot of startup culture that is building up in the country. I think it is time that we shift back to those places which actually have our bases, and we, build them up to a bigger level, so that we can just have this campaigning that we are going around for vocal for local. Just does not mean that we are promoting local places, but also developing and increasing their culture and putting it out to those places where people can understand, yeah, this place can also build up such a thing. Next up, we have David. David is the co-founder of Outpost, a network of living and co-working spaces. Previously, he worked in the Wall Street, White House, and charity based in Uganda. Hi, David. Hope you can hear me well.
I hear you perfectly. My apologies. My camera is fuzzy, so you just
No,
get to see
not a problem at all.
of me.
All right. So what I would like to know is, since we've been in a not just a pandemic crisis right now, we are also hit back with a lot of economy crisis where we have been dealing with a lot of overcompensation that is going on, and not just that. Moreover, with our community building up to a lot of startups that are building out there, a lot of digital nomads that are increasing throughout. Uh, how much do you think is it going to be relatable to those places that are off-beaten, unexplored? Do you think co-working and co-living spaces have actually a scope for these kind of places?
Well, really what I try and do is take a step back and look where we are. Currently, to talk about remote co-living, co-working communities, remote working communities, they're just not active. With borders closed, it's hard to see in the next month things look bright for people who want to get on the road with their laptops. But when we look into the future, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, what we've seen is just a major change in what people feel is possible with regard to the office. That there's this sense that the office is no longer the home base for people who want to work, and that increasingly what's more important than the physical location is the network you're a part of, and whether people can be away from their, if you will, if companies allow them to be away from their physical office, whether it's a couple days a week or they can be away for weeks or months at a time. What we're seeing is a whole new generation that's really untethered from the physical space. And so because of that, when we look into the future, we see the opportunity for new nomads or anywhere workers is quite bright.
That sounds great. Now, since we are all in a pandemic and everyone's trying to grow through it and trying to sustain their businesses, do you think there is a really good track for these places in the future as well? Like in terms when we talk about pandemic, people are trying to maintain social distance. They're trying to be precautious that they do not want to get infected. So there's a lot of trend that we see that they're moving to off-beaten places in terms of avoiding contact with a lot of crowd. So do you think there's a good opportunity for those who are in off-beaten places compared to those who are located in cities?
Well, I think right now, like I mentioned, it's a tough environment, but when we're looking years ahead, this economy won't last, and although it's painful, this travel environment now won't last, and it is indeed painful. I mean, everyone wants to be where they are not now. Everyone would switch places with probably someone else on the screen. We want those experiences. So I don't feel that, I'm well placed to say, oh, will cities thrive? Will countrysides thrive? My view is that they'll all thrive, that people really want to get out there. And given the opportunity before this crisis, at least in the US, 2 in 3 people, millennials and Gen Zs, felt stuck in their life. And that number can only have increased. And when people feel stuck or they feel they don't lack control, they want to get out and they want to explore. And so whether it's Mayur's place in the remote hinterlands, or it's our place in Bali, or it's a place in the city, I think people are going to want to get out and become untethered.
That's great. I think I can agree to that point where we have an understanding where a lot of people have been sort of locked into quarantines that they want to breathe a little bit and live free. So I think this culture is building up. Mayur, I would like to ask you, since we have this culture where people are now, what I have seen throughout, I have seen a lot of bachelors, a lot of digital nomads, a lot of entrepreneurs, they're shifting into these kind of places instead of renting out apartments, sort of renting out, accommodations for their long-term basis, but instead shift to these places where they have a lot of convenience in terms of their co-working place as well as a community network. Do you think we have, a big future model in terms of subscription plans where we are selling accommodation for needy places like this?
Yes, Shaurya, definitely. I feel that the trend is going to grow. Uh, there are a lot of drivers to this. So first thing is Indian cities are overcrowded. Uh, and in last 4 or 5 months, people have realized that they don't really need to travel to get work done. And they don't need to be in those cities to, you know, uh, earn their money or earn their bread and butter. So if uh, the culture, remote work culture, persists and thrives even in the post-pandemic world, we'll see a lot of shift from urban to tier two, tier three cities. Uh, there would be two classes of it. There would be one class of people who would want to go somewhere and settle there. So they would prefer to rent an apartment for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and so on, or buy a house. And then there is a class more younger people who would prefer to explore new places. And I feel that the second class is going to create a huge market for monthly accommodation and co-living places, which go by month.
That sounds good. But moreover, I would also like to have an understanding on the basis what is happening now is since I have no clue about all over the world where we're having the same system. But yes, a lot of countries and a lot of governments are taking pandemic actions where we are trying to limit occupancies. We are trying to isolate people in. Now with a lot of quarantine going on, a lot of isolation going on, a lot of 14 days isolation that is going on with limited occupancies, how do you think the business has been affected in terms of this pandemic in comparison to those of touristic places which you can probably host for a day or two or probably minimal amount of days. So how exactly are you trying to sustain the business in this time compared to those of a touristic place in terms of its accommodation, and also how are you looking out in the future?
Is that a question for me, Shaurya?
Yeah, Mayur.
Okay, so I feel that being in Goa, being close to Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, we have seen a lot of people getting tired of the city life and you know just want to change, and they are moving to Goa. So most of them are moving for long term because the business, or we are in a ultra touristy place, but there are no short term travelers anymore, and I don't think that will happen over the next 6 months. So most people are moving for a month, and we only do monthly rental. So uh, for most people, we are a sort of preferred place because they already know about NomadGao over last 1 year. Uh, and then, because they want everything set for them, good internet, power backup and stuff. Uh, that's what they are looking at, because when somebody is transitioning from a city, the first 1 month, 2 month, that's the hardest part, because
True.
you are getting used to a different way of life. And I think a lot of people are coming to us with that intention, that they want a soft launch pad. Then they'll explore their own places.
That's sort of a nice pickup that we have had, not just in the country but around worldwide, where we've been seeing initiatives not just relating to co-working and co-living spaces, but we also have cultural development in terms of slow travel that is going on. Slow travel with way. What I would ask is, Nikhil, now with this pandemic world, we've been all thriving, and I think what I have understood with co-working, how are you exactly dealing with the problem where we have people now shifting out to options like work from home? They are shifting to the problems of where you have to maintain social distancing, you have to have precautions. So how are you managing in terms of these scenarios?
So see, Shaurya, I'll take this question in the evolution of office space. At one point of time, office spaces used to be small cubicles, dark, dingy spaces, and then came the Office 2.0, which was co-working or flexible spaces. You had large open spaces, large community spaces, people congregated, etc. In today's world, people getting together in one room may be, not a great thing. So now we feel that is the evolution of Office 3.0, where both companies, team members, organizations are realizing that building large 5,000 team member workspaces may not be feasible, considering, and it's not a short term thing. The pandemic will last only for a certain amount of time, but companies have realized that the entire workforce does not need to be under one roof to get work done, because there is wastage of resources, there's wastage of time and people traveling, etc. So we feel that the new office is going to be a space where people come occasionally, say once a week, twice a week, just for meetings or collaborations, and then there will be satellite spaces where people can work from. Now, whether that satellite space is somebody working from home, somebody working from a cafe, somebody working from a co-working space close to their house, or somebody working in a village, like Mayur was saying, they're running a project called the Panchayat project, where people can actually work out
Program,
of villages. So people who do not need to be in an office space could be working from anywhere and could come to that central HQ or office space whenever they need to collaborate. So I think all workspaces are now heading towards that direction, and how can they enable that? So there are multiple workspaces that are launched, a work from home package, where they provide you a great internet connection and a ergonomic chair and table at your home. We're partnering with multiple hotels, cafes, co-working spaces around the country, so that we can increase our geographic spread. So somebody who's a member of Coworks can actually work out of say next hotel in Delhi, or a Y co-working space in Pune, or so on and so forth. So basically, I think it's a time for everybody to collaborate and work together to enable this geographic workspace distribution. So basically create a distributed offering of workspaces. That's the way that we're looking at this scenario and trying to address it.
So, how long do you expect, this hit, the economic hit, not just the pandemic hit, but also the economy hit, to be lasted throughout the co-working spaces? And also, how are you looking out in the future? Do you think there's a good requirement, and in not just rural places, but also cities where we already have established co-working spaces, that are multiple co-working spaces, in terms of brand value?
So see, our projection is that by March or April of next year, we should see a 70 to 75% return of business, but a complete return we're expecting by January of 2022. That's so we went through various industry researchers, different bodies, etc. But a complete return of real estate businesses seem to be only by January 2022. But the challenge is that co-working spaces house multiple businesses, some in media, some in entertainment, some in travel, etc. So those industries have different timelines of when they will return fully back to normalcy. So yeah, it'll take some time, but the idea is that, like you said, even if it's not in remote locations or tier 2 cities, even in tier 1 cities, say companies who had 800 desks with us now want those 800 desks distributed across the city. For example, Coworks has 9 locations in Bangalore. So a person who has an office of 800 people in one location would now want their teams to have the flexibility to work from a location close by to their house. So we would try and enable that for companies.
That sounds great. I think, yes, this is such a nice point you've put across, and not just you, I think Mayur along with David. So there is a bright future. We can see that, although I think there's a little bit of sustainability and a little bit of holding off that people would have to do at this moment.
If I may jump in,
yeah, sure.
I feel that is also a great opportunity for companies like Coworks, because you have obviously the people who are hesitant, who may currently have a space to come back in. But over time, you still have the trend of companies reassessing the need for the same size office. And so, this could be the dawn of Cowork 3.0, to use your lexicon, and that people want. I mean, the one thing that we have to also understand is that the office serves not just a function for the companies themselves, but it serves as a social space for people. And when you rip away the office, you have to replace it with some other types of community and some other type of socialness, because sitting at your home for a while doesn't fulfill those same needs. So it really sets itself up for companies like Cowrks to be at the dawn of that next era.
Right.
I think that's such a good point. I think Nikhil could probably agree to those points where because I think David, yeah, we have that understanding where at least even throughout the country where we've been trying with startups growing in with a lot of requirements for offices shifting towards co-working spaces rather than renting out office space because brands such as Cowork are providing services and amenities which are helping out with terms of internet connections, a whole lot of package. So I think that package deal is something that you guys are, sort of looking into, which is sort of beating out the market with compared to those of office spaces. What I would like to know is, with Vocal for Local campaign and, emerging startups from local places, how do you think is it a good investment for those who are looking out for investment, or should they actually hold off on these terms? With compared to those of co-living spaces and in terms of that of a co-working space.
Sorry, I didn't get that. So you're saying
so this question is for Nikhil and David together. So we have Vocal for Local campaign that are going on right now, where local governments are promoting local tourism in terms of their culture, tradition, and we have also seen that digital nomads are now moving to these further places to avoid contraction between crowds. So do you think this is a good investment for those who are looking for investments?
David, you want to start, or can I take that?
In terms of my thinking on investments or strategy overall, I can't make a decision based on today's market and today's world. I believe that we're in a little bit of a stasis. Countries are dealing with flare-ups. This type of world with limited travel and restricted travel is going to continue, but it's not going to continue forever. And because of that, really investing in the world today would be challenging for me. And I can't really look through that lens. What I do try to look out is, again, 3, 6, 18, 24 months ahead, when we've established a new normal and travel is open. That's in terms of the physical locations and investment in them. So I think overall what we're seeing is that people do want to experience more of the world, and that hasn't changed. And in the past 20 years, as I've been traveling, more of the world increases to open up. So therefore, people want to get further and further. So based on that trend, I would see opportunities in rural spaces, not based on the fact that people are concerned now about limiting their exposure to people next to each other.
And just adding to what David said, I think situations like these bring out the best of innovation. So I think companies that can truly innovate at this point of time are the ones that would be worth investing, that would be poised for growth. So it truly depends on how they can tackle problems like health and safety, problems like meaningful connections, and so on and so forth.
So, when we talk, with these points of rural places, there are a lot of problems that I think a lot of companies companies like Cowrks and co-living spaces, they have a lot of problems in terms of assessing the place and setting it up. What kind of crowd would you sort of expect in these places that you would be dragging in with the conformity that you would be having at least a 50% occupancy almost every other month? So do you think co-living and co-working spaces have a lot of influences in terms of its promotional towards tourism, culture, and traditions?
So yes, I feel like I've mentioned earlier during the conversation, I feel most important thing is why remote work or work from home is not a permanent solution, because at one point of time people want a human connection, they want to be part of a culture, etc. So I think not only co-working spaces but co-living spaces, or any space that involves people coming together and interacting, creates that culture, creates that opportunity for people to interact with each other. And that's where I feel spaces, whether they are co-working or co-living, come into play. They enable people to grow with each other, collaborate with each other, and at the same time do it at a price that's not too deep on the pockets.
I think yeah, that's I think as a millennial and to understand that as even college students we all have a low budget and these kind of places actually help us out. I'll just introduce another speaker of ours, Daniel. Hi, Daniel, if you can hear me.
Hello, sorry for being late to the party. It's still morning here in
No
Malta.
problem.
Yesterday we went out with some nomads, and yeah, I woke up late and I messed up the timing. But anyway, I have to add something to your question. You asked what is like the influence spaces can have on a specific location, culture-wise, whatsoever. So
Definitely.
we have one example here in Malta. Right from the beginning, we opened up the community, not only be bound to a house, but be bound to like a whole city, because Malta is attracting a lot of people with shared values compared to nomads or people who want to go into co-livings. So during Corona/COVID times, we started an initiative called Invisible Hands, helping old people in need and vulnerable people. So, and out of this community, which we built over the last 2 years, in 3 days, we built a team, 7 people, and we helped over 1,000 old people here in Malta. So we have foreigners, mostly, who work in IT, and out of a sudden, they help old people. And this leaves an impression, and this shows like what is possible. And yeah, I think this is the biggest thing whatever came out of the people who stayed at Cocohub or whatsoever. So definitely, it has an impact. Yeah.
So, do you think? So, what I would say is, comparison to my business is completely different than co-working and co-living spaces. But I can understand a part of it where where we have a lot of amenities provided to a lot of tourism people, and not just tourism, but a lot of young generation travelers that we have who are now moving to a sustainable sort of living. So, do you think co-living spaces and co-working spaces would have a lot of sustainability in the future? In terms of not just providing with amenities, but also creating those structures. I think Daniel can answer this one. Do you think there's a lot of sustainability in the future in terms of co-living and co-working spaces?
I think it's up. Like we will see a huge different like co-living spaces will just become more and more diverse. We will have co-living spaces for absolute hippies. We have co-living spaces for absolute blockchain entrepreneurs. Of course, right now we are still mixing the people, but in the future we will have like 20, 30 different kinds of co-living spaces. So sure, people who like to, who value sustainability, they opt in for a space which, is focusing on this, for sure. But what I see in general is that we need to increase the efficiency of co-living companies. I see a lot of resources being wasted there just because we don't have the right tools, the right platforms. Definitely. So there we can increase the efficiency in order to bring the price down. This is what.
So, Daniel, tell me one thing. Now, since you're saying that a lot of people miss out on the understanding of getting the right crowd, connecting with the right people, and exactly placing it in the right location. Now that we are growing in by the day, and since I see a lot of startups, not just in terms of co-working, but also co-living spaces that are increasing by the day. Do you think there's a lot of changes that are going to happen, not just physically, but also mentally for travelers as well as co-living and co-working spaces? Like, would you increase and decrease in capacity probably in the future?
Yes. So out of my experience, I mean, Malta is a little bit more pricey. So this acts as a filter. But we had a lot of guests who were just normally employed with a German company whatsoever. And I think the big move will come from there. That companies give their employees the freedom and even pay for a co-living stay. So we have whatever 6 weeks holiday allowance, and then we will have 8 weeks of co-living allowance. I think it's an instrument in order to attract great talent to a company. This can happen. But for this, again, we need data. Because, for example, if Microsoft is asking for 30,000 beds in Malta for their remote working employees, right now, no co-living space can answer this question. Even like the big ones, they don't have the capacity. So we need to bring the data together in order to answer those questions. And then we see a big move because the big companies will take us serious and out of a sudden, Siemens, Microsoft is sending 30,000 employees to the co-living industry. So I still think we need to, implement some things before this is possible. Yeah. Did
That
I answer?
sounds good. Yeah, definitely. So this next one is for Mayur. We also have an understanding, as Daniel said, a lot of places are not just shifting up, and now pandemic exactly has not put us in a position where we can understand what is going to happen in the future, but we are running through sustainability. For those people who are running co-working and co-living spaces in these pandemic times and trying to hold off the business, what kind of crowd or what kind of aspect would you tell them that this is the sort of crowd or this is the sort of thing that you would be probably focusing on right now, the specific kind of crowd or the specific kind of like I've seen few co-workings here that we have in the city where they also collaborate with artists to just show a platform, not just as a co-working space, but also have a lot of events going on so that they can, track back into overcompensation. So what would you suggest to those who are already in the business and, have tried to compensate in the business where they have been hit by the pandemic? So what would you suggest for that?
Yeah, Shaurya. So interestingly, before the pandemic, 80 to 90% of our guests or our members were foreigners, because the remote working culture in India was at a nascent stage, and due to the pandemic, there are a lot of first-time, remote workers, Indian remote workers that are coming into the market, and that's a huge market. We are a country of 1.3 billion people, right? So I would, those who are running co-working, co-living places, I would suggest them to focus on the new market and their needs. So typically for a first timer, the needs would be, they would want absolute best internet connection. They don't want any power issues to happen because in big cities, power issues are very, infrequent. So if you move to a place like Goa, you'd be shocked to see the power cuts happening all the time. And then build a community around it. So you can't really mix two different communities together. It doesn't work. So if you're hosting travelers and then you're also targeting digital nomads, chances are that there will be a clash in communities. So my second suggestion would be to focus on the right kind of community, building the right kind of community.
So what you're trying to see is like what we have this problem where we, with budget backpackers and then families, who want to sort of stay in hotel, but then they have a lower budget. So this kind of clash is sort of present where we have a community. Now, when we talk about community, not just this as a community, do you think in terms of, when we talk about slow traveling, that is people who want to visit for a long tenure, they're trying to visit the culture, tradition. Do you think there's a good build-up for this not just in the country but nationwide? And how do you think would it differ? Would it be better than that of budget stays, or would it be lower end to those of a budget stay?
Yeah, so a lot of interesting things are happening in the industry. The ones who are moving out of cities for the first time in years, they want to be with the right kind of people, and they don't know. Basically, the new remote worker is a class where they're still figuring out what they want from this lifestyle, right? So, it would be great to educate these kind of people on the lifestyle. Maybe initially you'll need to handhold them for the first month or so. So I think the build-up really depends on how you interact with your community, how you support your community to get into this lifestyle, and how you make their life easy during the transformation.
That sounds good. Daniel, sorry for just cutting it. People do want to see you, so if you can turn your webcam on, it would be really great. There are a lot of fans of yours out there. So you'll just wave your hand and just tell everyone hi so that they can just... So this one's for Nikhil. Nikhil, what understanding we've had with co-working spaces in cities, in terms of those which are in two-tier, and when you're talking about one-tier cities, uh, in how are you talking in terms of crowd now with pandemic, just moving out, and people are easing into work back in, but yet we have local authorities still putting up little bardings where we have isolation going on, we have little lockdowns again and again going on. How do you think you can maintain till this time when it we are settled off? So how are you going to attract crowd, and how are you going to focus on a particular community to attract in towards your co-working spaces?
Important that all businesses, including co-works and co-working, implement very stringent health and safety measures to build in confidence in their members or the community to come back to office, because at one point of time, even if the vaccine is made, it will take time for it to be produced in the volumes that we need it at a global level. So while all of this happens, I think it's important that communities develop herd immunity and they come back to office, of course, with all measures of health and safety in place. So I think it's important, and that's what we've done. Whether it's checking at the entrance points of the building, continuous temperature checks for using the right kind of disinfection chemicals and at the right frequency, making sure all touch points such as coffee machines, door handles, etc., are sanitized frequently, using the right tools and techniques. So we've through technology built in Bluetooth sensors which alarm people if there are too many people within a specific location. Then at the entrance we have thermal cameras and mask detection cameras that tell you if you're not wearing a mask. With all of that being implemented in workspaces or living spaces, I think we can really control the spread of the disease and again build confidence in people returning back to work. So I think that will play a vital role in how these spaces open up. Of course, new business at this point of time will be limited, but talking about India, and it may be true for other micro locations as well. Business continuity as a concept was in books, was not, but not widely implemented on ground. But this pandemic has made people or companies or organizations realize the importance of the same. And we're seeing a huge demand in that segment where large companies who had everybody housed in one headquarters now wants to have certain remote locations for business continuity in case that specific location comes under lockdown due to local government regulations. So that's where we're seeing a significant demand. And also there are certain industries that have been, I wouldn't say positively impacted, but that have seen a surge in demand at this point of time, whether it's healthcare, whether it's certain segments of e-commerce. So we're seeing some demand from those industries as well.
So would you say there's a good rise when we talk about, since you said that, a lot of companies have understood the, not just about safety, they've also understood about, provision of amenities and, getting it to a standard. So do you think this will push up more further brands to get it to a level where we understand that, yes, co-workings are these particular standards? Like when we talk about hotels such as Taj, or, have five-star hotels, where they have provisions of entry when you have a person entering towards the entrance of the hotel and till the back end, you're providing him with services. So do you think now co-working spaces would be coming up to this level also?
Shaurya, actually, I have split thoughts on this. I feel temporarily, at least for the next 1 or 2 years, the market is going to be very price sensitive. So while we would like to come to that level of service, realistically speaking, it will be about providing the key essential services and making the price more relevant for the user. Because companies at this point of time would not want to invest heavily either into capex for their offices or invest heavily even into an ongoing recurring fee. But yes, say about 1.5 2 years from now, when people have realized that flexible spaces is a viable solution as compared to traditional office spaces, they would like their office culture or their traditional office space level amenities to also be replicated in their flexible spaces. But temporarily, at least for the next 1.5 year, I feel it is going to be more about making it price relevant.
I think that yes, it's a very good point since people have been hit not just in terms of business, but individuals also who have been laid off from businesses will try to hold on to paying a lot of amount of money or a lot of finance to other brands. Daniel, this next question is for you. What I would like to know is there a particular, you've been attracting a limited crowd in terms of co-working spaces or co-living spaces when we talk about, digital nomads shifting in. But is there a particular crowd that you have been looking for that, you would probably expand into, that this is the kind of crowd also that I would like to involve into my co-living spaces?
I mean, it all boils. So we have a slightly different idea about this. So in the first space, or in the first place, you need to enjoy your role as a community manager in a house, for example. So I think also the community manager plays a role which crowd you attract. Because I think we should put the personality of the boss of the house more in the foreground. So yeah, so when I always talk about IT and blockchain, for sure I attract those people. If we would have someone talking all the time about yoga, we would attract those people. Because so this is one mechanism where you can basically control it. But also I have to say, some days ago we spoke about co-living for families, and I think a much higher need there. And this problem is far more important to be solved than for nomads, I think. So for sure, there are so many different varieties, but we need to do the basics first. So I see accommodation just like as one part of it, and there needs to be an API behind. And just imagine all of the co-living spaces would have an API, and we could build products and communities around that. This would be awesome. And then we don't need to build a space specifically for one crowd. No, this is like the accommodation provider. And there's more to the cake. This is just one part. So it depends on the ambassador and also the location. Mm-hmm.
So you would say that it could be possible that obviously there is a lot of research and understanding that goes on, in terms where somebody is opening up a co-living or a co-working space. But Daniel, do you think would we have a place where we talk about, where we have done a lot of efforts, we are getting in, started, we've put in a lot of investment to start up this co-living space. Do you think there'll be a point of time where we have not just digital nomads, there are a lot of startups, a lot of co-working spaces, but do you think we'll also have a lot of individuals such as, travelers who want to stay for a long term, who are trying to, or people who, instead of searching for accommodation like flats or, housing, they're instead moving into these places for a long term?
Of course, I think co-living spaces will become a commodity. So the brand will be less important because in the end, a lot of them will be the same. So I see this movement. It's kind of a commodity. But what was your question on point, so I can answer it on point?
Yeah, so do you think there is going to be a future where we have guests, not just startups, but normal travelers, just staying for long-term basis, but, instead living there like as if they do it in their houses or, co-housing places? So do you think there is a good market for that?
100%. Like where we are coming from, like we do living communities in Germany since 50, 60 years. And even when you're 40 or 50, some people decide to live in a living community because they like the community aspect of it. The problem is it's not sexy and people judge you if you do so because they think you are a hippie. So it's already existing, but it's not sexy. And I totally want to live like this, but to make it sustainable, it needs to be cheaper and affordable. So yeah. Otherwise, we end up financing the life of an investor for the end of our life, and this is not possible. So there needs to be like co-sharing of properties, cooperatives, I have no idea, but it needs to be sexy and put into IT. And then we do the right things. But this is super futuristic. If you would co-own 1,000 properties and you manage them nicely and you make a generate a passive income and you can also live there. I have no idea. The future is great and we have to see. But we need sustainable forms of living and they need to be enabled through IT. Yeah. And we will see a lot of startups growing.
This is hopeful. This is quite hopeful, where we have an understanding, that we are not just particularly focusing on one aspect of the crowd. Yes, they might sound that we are focusing on one particular type of crowd. David, I would ask you is what kind of efforts would you put in, for customers to stay back longer in terms of your business?
Well, what I focus on, I think what Daniel was getting at was what type of community, what type of values do they have? And for us, people stay with us, not because the beds are comfortable, although they are, and not because they have a great space to work and don't have to worry about electricity going out or the internet going out. But really, who's around them? Who are they spending time with? What business connections they are meeting? And really, what are the values of Outpost and who's there? And so while the people at Outpost, they want to explore the world, they want to do that growing personally and professionally, and they really want to connect with others. So that's what keeps them there, and that's what really brings them back. And as Daniel mentioned, his community is really based on the people who are at the front and the IT. And I think that's, and I don't mean to speak for him, but I assume that's really what gets people to stay. And what he was alluding to before about, co-living spaces could be a dime a dozen, or it could be a commodity. They each have their own uniqueness, and whether they take advantage of it or not is really what separates out a good space and a space that may be, if you will, just a bed and a few pillows.
So, David, do you think there would be, and would you expect something from the local authorities in terms of promoting this sort of living in the future, where we talk about having, co-living in rural places, not just rural places, but, in generic places also, but where we have a lot of growing tourism with slow traveling that is, just budding up?
Well, I do believe, because work is becoming flexible in terms of location, as this panel talks about, that slow travel will continue. And because a place like Outpost or any of the other co-living places that focus on people, remote workers, have a tendency to be a longer stay. And so what hospitality companies will see, or travel and tourism departments within the government, is that there's a unique niche that places like Outpost can provide. And so I think over time, and we're seeing it in Bali, as people think of, right, what's the future of tourism? Okay, it's slower, people going longer. They may spend more time doing a little bit of work while they're going. And I think you'll see some tailwinds pushing our industry along from the travel and tourism side.
Shaurya, can I add something to this? Yeah. So a lot of governments around the world have now started, realizing that the traditional way of tourism industry may not work in pandemics or in such shocks. Some countries have launched digital nomad visas. Others are sort of copying it and trying to see what can be done. I've been talking to Goa government since 2018, and I think we are seeing some traction there as well. I feel that the governments will eventually actively promote this sort of tourism.
So I think, this is sort of quite important, where we have an understanding that yes, slowly people are moving into ease of understanding that yes, work and businesses as usual. But Daniel, I have one question for you. In this pandemic time, we have a lot of businesses, who have been impacted. Probably a lot of them cannot sustain as much as a lot of people who have been, still afloat in terms of business. With a lot of businesses that are shut down, do you think anyone should open or invest right now into co-living, co-working spaces? Or and is this a good opportunity for those who are still afloat?
So first of all, I have to say I'm not a money guy. So and also I'm a little bit biased about real estate investments. I think in the last 2 years it was driven by the idea of higher return on your investment and not really by demand. So maybe it was just something healthy what happened right now to slow down the co-living boom, because otherwise maybe in 2 years we end up with a lot of burned companies who go out of business. So maybe I see it positive. It was needed. It was going in the wrong direction too fast. So yeah, I know about one big co-living which was about being developed here in Malta, and they stopped because the investors pulled the plug. But I don't see a reason why it would not work out, no, in the future.
So, what exactly do you look for in the future compared to that you've been doing by so far? What changes would you be, probably would you suggest or would you bring into your own brand also?
Can you rephrase the question? Like,
so what kind of changes would you be implementing in the future? You've been doing some sort of, traditional, probably you're doing some targeting market, or you sustaining terms. So what changes would you be bringing, and what changes would you suggest to those who have been running co-living and co-working spaces?
That's a really broad question to answer. I'm not sure if we need to change something actually. Like maybe we have to hope for like a platform or something which is able to make us more efficient in our operations. This would be nice, because then it's also easier for smaller players to enter the market, because right now you need to do your own marketing, like booking automation. It's far too complex, and once all of those things are solved by nice startups, then more small players can enter the market. This is what I'm hoping for, that we have like an app, and this app enables to start temporary co-living houses for a year. And I see that a lot of startups are going into this. So this is what I'm hoping for. It's like a, kind of disruption by IT. Because right now, this whole co-living also feels a little bit like traveling 20 years ago. Really analog and a little bit hard to book your stay. Not with Outpost Club, because they have their proper booking system. But if you see the majority, it feels a little bit like outdated and lagging behind. So it needs to be sexy, because people are willing to spend money on co-living because they want to experience it. But I have the feeling we have 10 times more people who want to try it out, and like there's no way.
There's no comparison. Understandable. Now since we are moving towards the end, what I would like is, I think one by one we can have a lot of suggestions that you guys can give to our audience out there. In terms of how co-living, co-working spaces have been changing the travel industry, and how also they have been sort of what kind of suggestions would you be giving them in general for co-living, co-working spaces, in the future. So I think
Sure, Shaurya. I actually also went through a couple of questions that the audience had shared. So I'll answer some of those also, if that's all right, some that are relevant to co-working. So one that you asked, Daniel, and I have also had some inputs on that, is whether it's viable to open a co-working or a co-living space post the pandemic. I would recommend that if somebody is planning to invest their money into this business, they should wait for at least a couple of more months, say 3-4 months, to see how the circumstances are panning out, see the development on the vaccine, see how industries are making their plans to return back to work. Are there changes that companies are doing in policies of working remotely, etc. Once you understood that, you know if there is a significant market to address or not. I would also recommend that most of these spaces usually tend to show economies when they start to scale and when there are multiple spaces. So it may also be relevant to try and partner with an existing operator if you have a space that you want to run, because it'll give you the necessary tools, techniques without investing a huge sum of money to enable a great experience for your member community. There was one question on whether maintenance and cleaning budgets have increased post-COVID. Yes, they have, but at the same time, your costs on consumables, etc., have gone down because people are not physically in your spaces. So I believe.
Nikhil, just cutting on that, sorry, just for cutting you
Yeah.
in. When you talk about, your maintenance costs have gone up, and I understand even your landlords, in terms of when you have opened up a space, a lot of landlords out there, you have understood that right now, currently, they've been, hiking up prices. There've been a lot of problems going on in terms of, landlords' rent agreements. So when you talk about pricings, where everyone is increasing pricing day by day, how exactly are you managing in terms of finance when you talk about people that are coming in? They always look for low budget, and they have a very low budget when we have been hit by the pandemic. So how are you managing that sort of cost with maintenance costs going high? You have your own landlord to be paying high bills. So how are you managing, and how exactly would you be placing the price that would exactly would be convenient for you, your brand, and as well as the audience?
So, Shaurya, I feel, in fact, a couple of our locations, the landlords, in fact, have tried to support us. So they've given us some sort of rent abatements or the ability to pay certain rents at a later stage. And at this point of time, I think we've truly been able to really make our business very efficient. So we managed to, in fact, during the course of the last couple of months, save certain costs. And whatever we've saved, we've tried to pass that on to our customers so they're able to stay back in our spaces. Because I think more than real estate, the smaller, like I mentioned earlier, the smaller companies or young startups are facing immense amount of cash flow pressure right now. So we're trying to support them in whatever way we can. Our costs have not really gone up. They've slightly come down, and we're passing that benefit on to our members. On an overall, there are
That
certain
sounds
parts of
great.
costs that have gone up, but the others have come down.
I think this is something that we've been dealing with a lot, and since you've been saying that you have not been increasing pricing as a lot of companies out there have, not in terms of co-living or co-working, but in generic brands. So this is, I think, would be attracting travelers and would be segmenting the market with how people travel nowadays. Mayur, I would like your suggestions. What would you like to say to the audience before?
Yeah. So I think I'm not sure what the audience is. If you are a co-working, co-living place or a cafe, just hold on. The time will pass and better days will come. Try to cut your costs and trying to keep your community engaged without events, because no events are happening. So engaging the community is a tough task right now. So put focus on that. If you are working remotely and want to try this lifestyle, uh, please do so. You'll meet great people. Go to places like Outpost. I went there back in 2016, and that's how my journey started. Uh, or Cocohub, for that matter. And yeah, just explore.
So David, he's sort of done your reviewing. So I think you should do the vice versa part and just help his promotion too. I think it would be only fair. What would you like to say to our audience as a suggestion? You would like to give to them.
I think you invest in your uniqueness. Really focus on who you are. Think about it. Think about who I am, who I want to attract, and fuse that into your company or your brand. And really go with that. And in terms of the crappy times that we're in, identify them. They're stressful. They're hard. And the profits aren't there, or the ability to travel isn't there. But we will turn. It will happen. And focus on getting to those times and thriving when you're there.
That sounds brilliant. I think that uniqueness of every individual is the thing that we build up our companies on sorts. Daniel, I think now you have the golden opportunity, so we've given you the golden buzzer just to press it around. So what would you like?
So I think if you're thinking about opening a co-living space, and I'm talking about a small one, less than 20 apartments, so you usually have private people doing it. and you want to do it for the sake of experience this lifestyle, do it. I did it for 3 years, and it's like living life on steroids. But as David said, be bold, be unique, focus on your uniqueness, and in our case, maybe build the community first in your city. Build community first, enter partnerships maybe with existing language schools or hotels, whatever. Start from there, and once you have the traction, open your own house. Yeah,
I think that sounds great. So thank you so much, Daniel, for those suggestions, and thank you so much, Nikhil, Mayur, and David. It was really nice having you and getting the perspective of how exactly we are changing the world with co-living, co-working spaces day by day. In terms of events, when we talk about slow travel, because this concept has been rising for a long time now, and with a lot of budding startups where we have a lot of individuals trying to invest, I think this is a perfect opportunity for people to have a networking when we are going to an online platform day by day. Even when we have work from home and people are getting sick and tired from working from home, I think this is the perfect space to go for. So thank you so much, speakers, and lovely to have you on board. For the rest of the audience, hope you've enjoyed this session. But apart from this, right now we'll be having a small break. But just after the break, be sure we have 2 events that are going on side by side. You can definitely check the attendee schedule on the link, and hope you can attend them all, and hopefully you will like them all. And great, we'll see you the next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.